Good morning. Happy awesome Saturday, my beautiful friends. This is Awesome Saturday. This is your Awesome Saturday service. Let's get some ass today on the Sabbath. My name is Maui Paul. We are here today to really dive into a topic that is near and dear to me and has been since I was a little boy, which is as we I love it. Tony, grab some ass. Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Shauna. Wonderful to see you ladies here today, as well as anybody else who is around. I do see I have more than just two folks watching, so leave me a comment. I'll say hi to you. But anyway, today we are talking about the F word. Boy, do I love the F word. I wanted to know what the F word was from a very young age, and so I was just like absolutely positively fascinated with the F word. Well, so today, we are talking about it, but we're not talking about the one that you're most familiar with that we might have seen in the movie A Christmas Story. Today, we are talking about the incredible power of forgiveness, and forgiveness is something that is incredibly misunderstood. Yeah, flan, I love it, Chris. Good morning. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about flan, all different varieties. We got the vanilla, the chocolate, the other types. I guess I don't know much about flan. But anyhow, now we're talking about forgiveness today and how forgiveness is ultimately a gift that we give ourselves. So forgiveness is something that is pretty well misunderstood because in our modern society, to forgive is to be perceived as weak. Where forgiveness is a thing that is done by weak people. Somebody wrongs you, and so you turn the other cheek, as it were, so that they can wrong you again, or forgive and forget, so that so that you have to eventually forgive and forget again. But forgiveness isn't just a moral action. It's not just something that we do for the benefit of other people. Forgiveness is a divine act. And the main thing it does is it frees us from the chains of resentment, and it reconnects us with who we really are. So if you remember from Sunday school, if you have read the Bible recently, or you know if you've ever actually read, like, what the major issues that the Jews had with Jesus, one of the biggest things was there was this group of people called the Pharisees. They still exist, and actually they're still very prevalent in Judaism. But the Pharisees were absolutely scandalized by Jesus doing one particular thing. Oh man, the Pharisees hate this one weird trick, and it was that they were scandalized by Jesus forgiving sins, because they thought, of course, well, who but God has the authority to forgive sins. If only God has that authority, why on earth is this guy walking around saying that he has that power to forgive sins too, except that he would be setting himself up to be equal with God? But what if Jesus wasn't showing us that Jesus was equal with God so much as that Jesus was showing us that the power to forgive sin is already within us? That we don't have to wait for some external force to forgive our sin, but rather that we can forgive others and have them forgive us. Forgiveness isn't something that happens to us; it's something that happens through us. And I think this is a really key point to understand, because if we think of forgiveness as a gift that we give to somebody else, or something where we all of a sudden start to have a good feeling, then then we are going to look at forgiveness as being like a kind of a labor rather than a transformational process. So I talked in the past about one of the issues that the Pharisees had with Jesus forgiving sins, and the in the Bible it comes through in a story about healing a paralyzed man. So these people had taken this paralyzed guy over to Jesus for healing, because that's what Jesus was doing at the time. He was doing a bunch of healing, and so instead of taking, instead of laying his hands on him and saying, okay, you're healed now, get up and walk away, Jesus said something very unusual and something that very much triggered the religious authorities at the time. He said, your sins are forgiven, get up and walk. What the heck? What an unusual thing to say. Like, what an unexpected thing to say. How could you? Are you saying that the because this man is sinning, that's why he's paralyzed? And if so, who gives you the authority to do such things? Like, the Pharisees had very real and very legitimate questions about this. And so right after that, Jesus says, well, so that you can see that I have the authority to do this, I'll say it a different way. He said, you're healed, take your mat and walk away. And then the guy took his mat and walked away. Now, this very, very much angered the religious leaders because this was something that was not just a direct affront to all of the laws regarding forgiving of sin, but it was also a direct affront to their authority and power. They had taught for a very long time and still do teach to this very day that that forgiving sins is something that only God can do. And so consequently, when we approach God with in a spirit of supplication, asking for our sins to be forgiven, for all of our errors to be forgiven, then we are ultimately abasing ourselves, and we are reinforcing our role as the created when we approach the Creator. But to the Pharisees, forgiving sins is God's exclusive domain, and so this is one of the many reasons they didn't like Jesus. But Jesus wasn't just claiming divine authority. Jesus was revealing a deeper truth, which is that the divine resides within all of us. The power to forgive sin and to forgive error that resides within all of us. So I think another word we need to unpack here as we talk about forgiveness is the word sin. So sin means to miss the mark. When we sin, it's because we shot an arrow and we didn't hit the target we were aiming for. Sin is not inherently something that we that is good or bad. Sin is just when we aim for a target, we don't hit that target, which I think all of us have aimed for targets and not hit those targets. In fact, I'd say that every one of us sins every day because we never really live up to our own ideals of who we can be. And so because that because sin is about missing the target, we can understand that it's not about judging the people around us as being good or bad. It's simply about recognizing that we and everybody else around us misses when we shoot arrows and we miss our targets. So Jesus wasn't just performing miracles and making people walk. He was demonstrating the power of radical forgiveness as a pathway to spiritual freedom. So another thing another place where this shows up in the ministry of Jesus is when his disciples say, "Teach us how to pray," and Jesus says, among other things, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." It's in the Lord's Prayer. Well, it's interesting that it's translated as trespasses. So when we trespass, it's because there is some kind of a posted sign, or there is a fence, or there's something like that. There's a boundary, and we go across a boundary that we ought not to have crossed. When I was a kid, I used to walk through the woods a lot, and there were no trespassing signs on all the trees, and that did not stop me from walking past these no trespassing signs because there was nobody there to stop me. But it also didn't stop me from being wrong for trespassing in that place that I ought not to have been trespassing. There were dangerous things there, and of course, all the cool stuff that you want to see when you're a kid. Abandoned buildings and abandoned cars, and I trespassed in all kinds of places that I ought not to have been, and places that were dangerous, and places that I could have gotten hurt or killed or died in. And of course, then my parents would have gone after the person who posted those no trespassing signs that I glibly ignored. But so trespassing is about transgressing a boundary. And so the term, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, is really about forgive those people who transgress our boundaries. And then also we have the authority to forgive those who trespass against our boundaries. Going back to the story about Jesus and that paralyzed man, one of the things that the Pharisees had a big problem with, and something that it's still difficult for us to wrap our heads around, is that Jesus was not forgiving this guy for sins that this guy sinned against Jesus. Jesus was forgiving this guy for sins that this guy sinned against other people, and in that way was claiming the authority of God, was claiming the authority to not just forgive the sins that somebody sinned against us, but rather to forgive sin in general, which is quite the heresy. And so the teachers of the religious law were understandably very, very miffed about that. So, in the end, Forgiveness and the line about forgiving us our trespasses and forgiving those against or those who trespass against us is not just a request for mercy, it's a call for us to participate in the forgiveness process. Our willingness to forgive other people opens the doors for our own forgiveness. And in fact, because we are judged by the same measure that we judge others, we are also called to forgive ourselves with the same measure that we forgive others. And so as we do forgive, the capacity that we have to forgive other people is reflected in our capacity to forgive ourselves. And who knows us better than ourselves? Who knows, who knows the all the ways that we fall short, all the ways that we miss the mark, all the ways that we sin better than us? So when we hold on to grudges, when we refuse to forgive, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Forgiveness is a way that we detox our soul. It's a way that we get rid of that poison. It's a way that we release that and allow that forgiveness to happen, even if the other person is not sorry. There's an idea that the other person has to be sorry, that the other person has to be contrite, that the person who has wronged us must reach out first. But in the end, how many of the people who have wronged you have any idea that they wronged you? How many of the people that have wronged you care about that they've wronged you? Oftentimes, we are always justified in our own actions. And even when I've wronged other people, I have for many years justified my own actions in one way or the other. And while this is certainly a form of sin, because I missed the mark, because I hurt somebody and then refused to admit it, this is also an indication for me that other people do the same exact thing. When somebody wrongs me, they justify it. And that's okay. That's part of the human nature. I can forgive them whether or not they believe that they need to be forgiven. When I lived in Hawaii, there was a spiritual practice that many of the Hawaiians did called Ho'oponopono. And Ho'oponopono it's a traditional reconciliation practice. The words themselves mean to make right, and they emphasize the interconnectedness of all of us and the idea that unresolved conflicts they affect not just the individuals involved, but they affect entire communities. We know that unresolved conflicts affect entire communities simply by looking at politics, looking at how unresolved conflicts at the highest level of politics affect the day-to-day lives of individuals who will never have a say in how those conflicts are actually resolved. And so the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono technique has four key phrases that are designed specifically to take these unresolved conflicts and resolve them. The four phrases are: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. So whenever we need to forgive somebody, the first thing that we say is, I'm sorry. Why do we say that we're sorry if they're the one who needs forgiveness? For a long time, I really struggled with that. I'm like, why should I apologize? They're the one who did me wrong. They're the one who did me dirty. Why should I say the words, I'm sorry? And the reason is because when somebody did me dirty, the first thing that I think of is about how wrong they are. And so I instantly am judging them. And if I'm judging them, I'm also, by very nature of judging them, I'm judging myself as well. And so by saying that I'm sorry, I'm not only apologizing to them for judging them, I'm apologizing to myself for allowing that bitterness, that root of bitterness, that seed to exist inside of my soul. The next thing that we say is, please forgive me. Well, that's the thing that naturally follows, and I'm sorry, and then please forgive me. But again, I was very confused as to why on earth I would say please forgive me to somebody who I was working on forgiving. And again, I realized that it was because the fact is that this person who had wronged me, or this situation where I felt like I was being put upon, where somebody had done me dirty, this situation was something that I was judging inside of my own heart. And it was weight that was on my soul. And so I asked myself to forgive myself for carrying that weight unnecessarily. The third thing that we say is thank you. And thank you is we thank the situation, we thank the person. But again, why would I thank somebody who has hurt me? And the answer is that I say thank you because of the lessons that they teach me through that pain. The lessons that I've learned, the better person that I have become as a result of being able to say the first two things. Before somebody wronged me, I wasn't able to do that. After somebody wronged me, I was. And so I say thank you to them. I say thank you to the situation. I say thank you to myself for being willing to release these burdens. And the fourth thing I say, and the fourth phrase that's so important in the tradition is I love you. Well, how can we hold resentment against somebody that we love? I found in my life that when I start to resent somebody, when I start to have contempt for a person or a situation, that just saying the words "I love you" evaporates that contempt. The two cannot coexist. And so the Ho'oponopono art of forgiveness, the four phrases, they teach us that by healing ourselves, we contribute to the healing of others. And this aligns with one of my deepest beliefs in collective consciousness, that when we forgive, we shift not just our personal energy, we shift the energy of the entire community, of the entire collective consciousness. And I do believe that we are collective consciousness, we express as human on this plane of understanding. And so the next time that you feel like you've been wronged by somebody, I'd like it just to invite you to use this Ho'oponopono technique, to use the four phrases: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. When we say these things in relation to somebody who has done us wrong, it releases us from the burden of having to hate them. It releases us from the burden of having to judge them. It releases us from the burden of having to carry around all of that negative spiritual energy through our day-to-day lives and having it affect us, affect all of our decisions. And so one of the most powerful things that I ever did, I made a forgiveness list. I listed every single thing that I could think of where I had wronged somebody else or where somebody else had wronged me. And man, this list was like pages and pages long, everything that I could remember. And I looked at it and was like, this is all the resentment that I'm holding that I can think of right now. And I did, and over every single one of those things, and this took hours to do, but over every single one of those situations and people, I spoke those four phrases, and by the end of it, I could not keep the tears from flowing from my eyes because I felt so much release. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. Very, very, very powerful. So, well, I encourage you, the next time that you feel like you are being wronged by somebody, or the next time that something comes up in your world that is taking your peace away, to say these four phrases: the "I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you." To have the to work through that Ho'oponopono forgiveness practice, and just watch as the weight falls off of your life. So when we understand that forgiveness starts inside of us, it transitions that responsibility from the divine to us, and that's a very radical thought, and that's a very radical responsibility. Forgiveness is an inside job, and we often think about that forgiveness is about releasing other people from the guilt that they ought to be feeling because of all the wrong that they did to us. But in the end, forgiveness is about freeing ourselves. Holding on to anger is like gripping a hot coal in our hands, and the longer that we hold it, the more it burns us. Forgiveness is the act of letting it go. So, just like the Pharisees in the story about Jesus that I told earlier on, it's a very legitimate question: is, but I'm not God. Who am I to forgive? And we don't need to be God to forgive. We only have to recognize that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And so, therefore, the power to forgive is within us. The power to forgive the people who trespass against us is within us, and we can do it. And not only that, but the power to forgive those who don't trespass against us is within us. And we can do that as well. Because again, forgiveness is a gift that we give ourselves. Who are we judging except ourselves as we consider that all the ways that the people around us have wronged the other people around us? We are setting ourselves up as the judge, and we are setting ourselves up for pain, therefore. So since we are all connected, and separation is an illusion, when we believe that somebody who is separate from us has wronged us, it keeps us trapped in cycles of resentment. And when we forgive, We remember that we are one with others, that we are one with the divine, that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and that God is one, and therefore we are one as well. So when God created us in his own image, forgiveness then became a part of our spiritual DNA. So I just want to close it out by saying that forgiveness isn't about the past. It is about reclaiming our future. It's not a favor that we do for other people. It's the greatest gift we can possibly give ourselves. You know, when Jesus showed us through the forgiveness of the various people that he forgave, he showed us that forgiveness is a divine act, but he also showed us that we are capable of participating in that divine act. And when we forgive, we are stepping into our highest spiritual potential. So I have to ask you, like, who do you need to forgive today? Maybe it's somebody from your family. Maybe it's somebody from work. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's an ex. Maybe it's somebody who considers themselves your enemy. Maybe it's somebody you consider that is your enemy. Forgiveness is freedom, my beautiful friends, and that freedom is yours for the taking. So reach out and take it. It's yours. It is your spiritual birthright. And as we forgive, and to the degree that we forgive, that is the degree to which we experience peace. And I want that peace for you. I desire that peace for you, because I believe that the peace that you experience and the peace that I experience are the same experience. So I'm going to continue to experience as much peace as I possibly can. I encourage you to do so as well. Remember those four beautiful phrases from the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono. I'll throw them in the chat. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. When we say these things, and we don't even have to believe them, we don't have to believe them, but when we just say them, it releases us from a tremendous burden that we didn't even know we had. So again, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. And so as we say all of these things, with as we speak these powerful words over the over the situations that bring us pain, find that we will eventually have some healing and some peace. All right, so I want to say thank you to everybody who is here. Thanks for getting some ass with me. This is an awesome Saturday. So let's have an awesome day. Let's hang out with awesome people. Let's do awesome things. Let's eat awesome food in awesome places and celebrate our awesome humanity. I'm going to get back to the to the never-ending task of raising up the next generation, who has been very, very nice about being quiet during this whole thing. So thank you, Persephone. I love you. I'll talk to all you all on Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you so much for Shauna and Tony, Chris, for being here, and to the other folks. I see that I have other folks watching who did not comment, but I love you. I appreciate you. I care about you. I think that you're awesome, and I will talk to everybody on Monday at 9 a.m. Until then, aloha from paradise and happy awesome Saturday.